Alright, gamers. Let's get this settled. We've had a rough couple years off and on. First it was women, always telling us that our games were casually misogynistic and alienating to a female audience, and seemingly designed by perpetually horny 14-year-old boys. But of course, we didn't have to worry about that because it was women complaining. But then, cuck men started to complain as well, and look at where we are now. Video games where social justice is run amok, where video game women don't develop crippling back problems from their cartoonishly huge tits, where brown people are allowed to be something other than generic faceless enemies that you get to shoot at. And it gets worse, because now they want video games for homos and lesbians. Where does the madness end? Now, I've heard the rumors. We all have. It gets to me too. And I want to assuage any fears that you might have. It's come to my attention that some people think that video games have been made by and played by gay people for as long as video games have existed. Some are even saying that there have been gay characters and gay themes as far back as the 80s. And let me tell you right now, that after my many long hours of doing absolutely no research on this topic at all, that I can tell you definitively that gay people do not exist. We don't ever have to think about including gay people in games at all because I simply choose to not believe in them. We especially don't have to worry about thinking about how representation in video games affects people or how changing trends in the video game market and progressive social movement might change how we engage with representation in media. Nope, don't have to do any of that anymore. Now we can just sit back and relax and enjoy our completely politics-free video games about an escalation of conflict between two world superpowers.
Hey, who the fuck are you? How did you get into my house?
Ah, fuck! God damn it. I'm gonna need to get that fixed now. Ugh. Anyways, let's talk about LGBTQ representation in modern multiplayer video games. Before I get too heavily mired in the nuanced and weird overlapping factors that have led to the situation we find ourselves in, I want to go over the general idea of representation in media, and its use as a tool not only for social good, but also as a way of creating better stories. I have found that when we talk about representation, there is an uncritical attitude that presents any form of it as good and without fault. I also think representation in general is good, but I think there's more value to discussing why it's good rather than relying on an uninformed, dogmatic attitude. Along with helping those already on board with representation unravel their thoughts and feelings on the matter, I hope that this next section will do the same for those on the opposite side of the issue. I would like to believe that people, when presented with good arguments, are willing and able to have their minds changed. At the very least, I can hope that I can present some information that they may not have heard or considered before, and give them the opportunity to think through these topics with a little bit more depth and nuance. At the very least, I can hope that they won't send me annoying messages online. Anywho, there's a lot of arguments for queer representation, and I'm going to present three which I like to think of as discovery, visibility, and experience. LGBTQ people all go through some process of discovering their sexuality or gender identity. For some, it's quick, uncomplicated, and painless. For others, it's much more work. Regardless, the media that people personally consume and the media landscape that we all exist within influences that process in critical ways. When positive queer role models exist in media, it helps people who are in the process of figuring things out have the tools to conceptualize themselves in society. It allows them to no longer be an island in their own mind, to understand that people who are like them, who love like them, and live like them, are not aberrant. Seeing yourself reflected in other people, people who you idolize or whose traits you want to engender in yourself, this can provide comfort and a strength necessary to do bold things like come out to others. Even bad stereotyped representation seems to be better in some ways than invisibility. In one of the studies on media's influence on gay identity, there was a respondent who had a very salient point on that idea. While you're thrashing around trying to figure out who you are, that's the only real access you've got to what it means to be gay. You read anything you can get your paws on, you watch whatever gay movies are out there. I guess it's a good way of trying to figure out what the heck it means to be different, and what does it look like. And it's nice to know that you're not the only one in the universe. There are a lot of factors when it comes to self-discovery, but we know definitively that media gives us the tools to name ourselves, literally in the case of trans people, and it can give us the internal strength to say those names out loud. The inverse of the previous argument is an external-facing one, where instead of LGBTQ folks being normalized to their own existence, straight cis people can become acclimated to and understanding of the lives of queer people through their visibility in media. Most people exist within this very tight bubble of their own world, and their understanding of queer people may come almost entirely from the media that they consume. When they see positive representations of gay people, they are better able to empathize with us and comprehend our humanity. Even if you aren't as isolated from these people, the things we read and see and play shape how we think of the world. Representing those people within our media gives everyone the ability to understand, to see from new perspectives, lives, and experiences that would be difficult to conceptualize in a bubble. This extends beyond just the realm of personal acceptance of queer people. When those not in the community understand the experiences of marginalized people, they are better able to engage with them in other forms, most importantly, politically. LGBTQ people struggle against a variety of social and political issues, and we do not have the capacity to fix them on our own. We require allies. We have to have people that understand us and advocate for our rights, because there is no alternative. There are people in the world who not only have the inclination, but the power to make life worse for queer people. And everyone who is able to relate to us, who knows about us, and understands us, is hopefully one less person able to be swayed into hateful action. To deny someone's access and visibility to a sphere of public life is to deny them the capacity to exist and be understood by others. As a less grim final argument, it's important to talk about how the experiences of gay people give us fuller, more interesting stories. I think it's relevant to remember that while queer people do not live wholly different lives than anyone else, their experiences can be unique and they can affect storytelling in so many wonderful ways. The influence of queer lives in stories can help reinforce themes or provide unique commentary on a specific topic. As a relevant recent example, I want to point towards the 2020 movie Supernova. Glenn Weldon, in his review of the movie for NPR, makes an interesting point. Had the couple at the heart of the story been a heterosexual one, the central tension, can one partner care for another, would have been weighed down with hoary notions about traditional gender roles. Focusing on a same-sex couple means preconceived, abstract notions about masculinity and femininity can be dispensed with, so that we can focus instead on the shifting power dynamics between these two specific individuals. The gay relationship in the film provides something more than novelty, more than just flavor. It helps to reinforce the themes at play, to strip away the superfluous so that the audience can wrestle with that central idea more precisely. To remove that aspect, that would be harming the movie in some way. I want to stress, though, that this idea that gay experiences can influence stories positively extends to all kinds of material, not just heady, sorrowful dramas. I know from first-hand experience that the lives of queer people can be utterly ridiculous and contribute so much comedy to the world.
So I had a guy in the Walmart line ask if I was gay, and I said, yes, how'd you know? He said that it was a little bit of intuition. I'm just really confused because I don't know where he would get that intuition,
What you should understand, though, is we often limit how queerness can contribute to comedy by limiting who is telling the jokes and how much they really understand queer people. Through understanding, you can create good subversive comedy that doesn't need to be toothless and infantile. In her video, The Darkness, ContraPoints talks about this very idea.
Look, half my job is telling jokes about trans people. I live for trans jokes. I just don't think cis people are very good at telling them, because they don't know enough about trans people to know what the funny things are. And being transgender is honestly the perfect topic for comedy. Like, you used to live as one gender, and then you became a different gender. Every single thing about that is absolutely hilarious.
We should recognize that queer people have these unique experiences that can be thought-provoking and insightful. Or they can just make you bust out laughing. The queerness cannot be removed while preserving the quality of the original work. The queerness is a feature, not a bug. Despite the fact that this video took so goddamn long to get here, this is a pretty basic overview of the topic. There are plenty more arguments and much more reading that elaborates on the points I've already made here. I wanted to get this information out here at the beginning because so much of the nuanced discussion of this topic dies in the crib, because we're still arguing about the general good done by representation. We can't talk about the detailed stuff, the areas where it overlaps with complex topics, where more harm is done than good because we don't have a foundation to work off of. I hope that this section can provide that, but ultimately, if you still aren't on board with the idea that discovery, visibility, and experience provide benefits to writing and to the world, then I would encourage you to pause the video and check out some of the further reading in the description, because the rest of the video is going to be using those ideas as a framework. Speaking of which, I have got to talk about why some queer representation in multiplayer video games pisses me off.
Closeted rockers, we've heard of a few. They won't risk their careers to come out to you.
I apologize to begin with because I'm going to be talking about League of Legends for a time. League of Legends is a prominent multiplayer video game whose storytelling structure is based on exploring characters and parts of the world through the medium of champion biographies, small interactions between characters in the game world, short stories on their external lore website, and sometimes also comics and animations. The actual gameplay of League of Legends takes these characters that have stories and lore and relationships and basically smashes them together in a big sandbox of violence. This becomes important in a sec, so just keep the idea in your mind that the gameplay of League of Legends is highly disconnected from its world and story. Back in 2018, League of Legends released a new champion for their roster, Niko. Niko became notable at the time because she was confirmed to be the first lesbian character in League of Legends. Niko has a few voice lines that implied that she was interested in or attracted to women. She also has a short story and a biography that was published when she was released, neither of which mention explicitly her status as being queer. The only reason that we know Niko is gay is because a writer on Twitter had to confirm it. Multiple articles from a variety of outlets praised Riot Games for their commitment to diversity and representation. Many very excited queer folks online took to Twitter to praise Riot as well and talked about how happy they were that a character that was like them got to be in the game. I want to stress that those people are right to feel happy about Niko's inclusion. Their feelings are not illegitimate or wrong. I also want to stress for the purposes of charitability and good criticism that the writers are not at fault either for my problems with this. I think there are a variety of factors that have overlapped in a strange way to create something that appears, at a glance, to be fine, but after a moment starts to wither. So here it is. This is the worst, most cowardly form of representation possible. I attempted at the beginning of this video to demonstrate why representation matters, and this fails at every conceivable step. If you need to demonstrate through a tweet that a character is gay, how exactly does that representation help gay people actualize themselves within society? How does it normalize their presence in society? How does this detail, which is so vague that the writer had to step in and confirm it themselves, add to the narrative and provide thematic or symbolic texture to the story? What does this kind of milquetoast representation do exactly? I would argue that what it does do is stir up controversy. It's a win-win for the company across the board. LGBTQ people and those in support of gay people will support the decision on principle and lap praise upon the company because most of them are starving for any kind of gay content. Staunch homophobes will get to be performatively angry but exist within such a small subset of the overall community that their nonsense gets derided and laughed at. Those in the middle, who maybe aren't even a huge fan of the gay thing but can't get worked up into a froth over it because it's just so small and inconsequential, remain totally unaffected and continue to play their game as normal. While all this is going on, the one thing people are talking about a lot is League of Legends. League of Legends gets to enjoy the benefits of good publicity from the gays while not having to take any action that would alienate their core audience. They get all the benefit without any of the risk that would be involved by making the representation actually bold or interesting. I do not want representation to become a marketing scheme used by companies to prove that they're woke, but not actually woke enough to be threatening. I also don't want actual LGBTQ people to lap praise upon these companies as a whole for making these decisions because they certainly do not give a fuck about this issue. At most, praise the writers for whatever inclusion they can put in. We know from history that writers want to put in these elements, and it has historically been slapped down by the higher-ups in these game companies. We know that this happens because this is what happened with the story of Diana and Leona in League of Legends. So, support them in their efforts to force companies to grow a pair, but Riot Games, the entity, has done nothing for you, and will do nothing for you unless it thinks it can get money out of you. And I know from experience that people will say, okay, well, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to add in a voice line that just says, I like women? Yeah, I know. I've heard it before. What I want them to do is use the tools at their disposal to write a character. Narratives are already funky in League of Legends just because of the format of the storytelling. That's fine. The writers have color stories, they have bios, they can write and adjust their already existing content to accommodate changes in the story and lore. All of these things are standard practice. What's not standard practice is having to have your writers put a representation Schrodinger's box into the game and expect all the little queer Sherlock Holmeses to solve the mystery of is it gay or not. Like, imagine for a moment any other element added to this. Anything more challenging or provocative than this. Imagine if they actually confirmed the relationship that Niko had with Nidalee, and how they can create good drama and good intriguing stories with that alone. If they did that, though, Riot might actually have to justify putting a queer couple in the game, whose presence cannot be avoided. People would say, isn't that a little too in our face? To which I would respond, do you think the same thing about Senna and Lucian, Lux and Ezreal, Xayah and Rakan, Ashe and Tryndamere, and Viego and Isolde? Are those hetero couples too in your face as well? Look, I want this to be constructive. I don't want you to conclude coming away from this video that we might as well not try to put gay people in anything at all because pedantic weirdos like me will make an internet about it. So what I want to do are two things. First, I want to say that this is a process of learning and development. We are working with mediums in new and unexpected ways, and the potential that they have is exciting, but it does come with drawbacks. I hope that I've been clear throughout this that this only represents a very niche portion of the gaming world, and we've come a very long ways in a very short period of time. I mean, one of the biggest games of last year was about a queer woman, and her relationships and sexuality could not be ignored. They couldn't be glossed over or purposely looked away from. They were not optional. The second thing I want to do is provide an example of really interesting representation from an area in gaming that has more restrictions on it than a multiplayer game like League. I want to talk about Magic the Gathering and Niko Eris. Niko is a non-binary character in the world of Magic the Gathering, and Niko's whole story revolves around the idea that they were destined to live a life that they did not want. They wanted to pursue their own path, to exist outside the rigid system ordained by fate itself. The implied pressures of society have in this case been personified and deified into a literal goddess. This goddess reasserts what is a right path in someone's life. Niko is pushing against the restrictive way of thinking, and doing so because their desire to be a hero, to be a bastion of what is good. That's an awesome story. This is also a story where the non-binary status of its main character cannot be ignored, and the story would be harmed with that element removed. They present in a non-binary way and use they-them pronouns, so it's nearly impossible to ignore as a character trait, and why would you? The theme of someone trying to move beyond the boundaries of their predestined fate is enhanced by it occurring on multiple different levels. Within the fiction of the story, they are trying to literally avoid the plans of the goddess of fate, and on a personal level, they exist in an identity that puts them outside a system we consider inherent or sacrosanct. Put this in contrast to the other Niko, and tell me honestly that there just isn't a way to integrate good representation into a game like League of Legends. There is a part of me that is happy that Niko exists and is conflicted over her. I can acknowledge that sometimes all you want in a story is for a gay character to just be present, to be subtle but visible. I feel awful trying to critique this because, God, there isn't a lot of good representation, so might as well just take what we can get, right? But no. I think that we are allowed to ask more of creators. I think we can ask them to be bolder, to be braver in the stories that they write. I think that in doing so, we will make better stories, and in having those stories, hopefully we can put something good back into the world. Sometimes being present is enough. Sometimes you don't need big, haughty, thematic goals. But ultimately, even if presence alone is your aspiration, there are still ways of doing it poorly. What's good, though, is that there is pressure to do better. Games with a similar storytelling style of League have managed to do this kind of thing much more elegantly. Overwatch is a great example. Deeply integrated into the storytelling structure, focused on a main character, supporting details that don't feel out of place. I love it. So, if you want to take anything away from this video, take this. Praise these writers when they succeed, and criticize them for their shortcomings, and always strive to ask more of what these stories can and should do. Good writing is built off of boldness, and there's nothing I want to see more than a good story told bravely. Oh, Jesus, this one took a really long time to get out. And honestly, there's not even any reason that it did take as long as it did. I'm just sort of, bad at this still, though I'm hoping to get better in the future. Anyways, thanks for watching the whole video. If you got to this point, congratulations. Hopefully I was able to provide some interesting input. If not, Well, I can't give you those 20 minutes back, so there's really nothing to be done now. Anyways, if you guys could like or comment or subscribe, you know, you've been on YouTube enough that you probably know to do all those things because it really helps out the channel. Yeah, feel free to check out my previous video, which was in a similar vein and very much about World of Warcraft and the women of World of Warcraft, so if you want to see more content like that, check that one out as well. I am hoping to God that I will be able to make one of these a little bit faster. Also, feel free to check out the resources I have in the description, because there's a lot of cool, interesting reading you can do down there. Okay, thanks so much, guys.